Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie dib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I've only ever had in cartridge form, and as you can probably tell, this is a Pilot Preparatory... I can speak English. Pilot Preparatory... Apparently I can't speak English. Moving on. It's brown. It's their brown ink in the cartridge. Pens that I used were a 1.5 Pilot Parallel, which I feel like probably everyone's seen. You know, but yeah, that, and then this Pilot Kaküno, which is, you know, they have the smiley nibs. You've probably seen them or heard of them. They've got the smiley face on them. But anyway, since this is a Japanese medium, it sort of writes more like a Western fine. So, now lately, pretty much all of my Pilot reviews have been making the inks look like they're behaving very badly. This one is not an exception. However, I was not terribly familiar with this ink before I started testing it, so it's entirely possible that, you know, it being shipped back and forth on all my travels has sort of like addled something in it and made it behave strangely, but anyways, this is some fascinating chromatography, let me tell you. So as you can see, there's sort of like this slate gray down at the bottom, but then it goes into purple. There's like purple all through here. And then even this looks like a dark plum, and then it barely sort of gets into sort of a brownish, where it's almost black, and then there's this bright yellow right at the edge, which, anyways, I thought that was cool. Yeah, so top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. I just did the Kaküno because, I mean, parallel would be kind of nuts, but it took 12 seconds to dry. As you can see, it is very dark. There is essentially no shading. This, from what I can tell, this is an extremely saturated ink, but it's sort of like even saturation. So I saw essentially no shading whatsoever. But it's problematic. As I hope you'll be able to see, I'll try and hold this real still. Yeah, I mean, there's feathering. And this is, you know, essentially a Western fine nib, and there's still feathering, and there's bleed. I mean, granted, it's mostly in the Pilot, but this whole section down here, this was with the Kaküno, and there's still some bleed. But it's sort of like a very dark, almost like ebony brown, like this could, you know, pass in the workplace. But good water test. It did dye the page, and it did explode, which, I mean, how often do we see that on Clairefontaine? But, yeah, so next is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter, where the Kaküno took 10 seconds to dry, but again, we see the same problems all over again. I mean, it's just sort of easier to show in the parallel, but you see the feathering and the exploding, and it's really not great. Actually, you get a lot of feathering in the word feathering. But see, even in the Kaküno, you get a lot of feathering. Very poorly behaved. Here, it seriously exploded. Dyed the page a significant amount, and it's very patchy. Look at that. This is Rhodia. So, next is Tomoe River, where you get just like a teeny bit of a gold halo, kind of a sheeny thing going on. And you get it in the writing a bit too, but 16 seconds to dry in what's, you know, kind of a fine nib. You get some shading, but barely any. And, I mean, this is the first time we've seen no bleed or feathering or spread. And, I mean, this is a very unique kind of paper, so... Water test for Tomoe River, really not bad. There's a good bit that remains. Usually it just washes away, but it did dye the page, it did get significantly lighter, and it did turn purple. So, but this ink is terribly dark, so the show-through on this is, or, you know, like the, if you were going to write on both sides, it might be somewhat distracting. Next is 20-pound copier paper. And I only used the Kaküno except to write the name up at the top. And I kind of want to show you just how much spread there was. These are the same pens, but on different papers. Look how much broader that got. Yeah, there's a great degree of feathering, an enormous amount of spread, and for what is essentially a fine nib, that is a lot of bleed through, and you know, it's all throughout. That's really not great. The water test, yes, a lot remained. It is very dark, but if you see sort of the explosions that sort of come off, those are sort of like brown and even yellow in spots, but what's in the center is purple. It's not ideal. It did dye the page. It's Next is Mead Notebook Paper, where again, save for writing the name of the ink, I only used the Kaküno, where it dried instantly, where, okay, the 20-pound copier paper it also dried essentially instantly, but here it was actually instantly. Yeah, there's bleed. There's a lot of bleed. And although this is some pretty cheap paper, usually, lately it outperforms the printer paper, so the fact that it still did this does not bode well. And there's feathering all throughout. Again, just sort of even to just compare it with the Tomoe River, it spread a good deal. Here it looks like a Western fine. Here I'd say it starts to look more like a medium, so that's not great. But this paper absolutely hates water, so of course this was a very terrible water test. Lots of exploding, lots of paper mangling. And this was a more modern Moleskine paper that I had torn out of a notebook previously, because this was an old test. I was avoiding posting it because I was hoping maybe some Pilot ink would start behaving well, but anyways, this is more along the lines of what you should expect the average Moleskine to do, and it did it. It exploded and feathered, and 5 seconds to dry. Yeah, really not great. And I mean, look at that water test. That's probably the worst water test we've seen so far. I mean, you can actually, they almost look like little, like, fireworks of brown and yellow. But, yeah. So, yeah, there you go. There's Pilot Brown knocking the camera. Not a great showing. Please do let me know your experiences with this ink if you have any. I really would like to hear about them because, as I said, I wasn't terribly familiar with this ink before I started using it for these tests. So, for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.